I clicked on the right. Oh my God. What is wrong with you? Hi. Oh, let me do this. Hi. Oops. Oops.
Your show will go live in 5 seconds.
This is
Four,
nuts.
3,
So
2,
nuts.
1.
Mm. Good morning. Hi. Thank you so much for joining me. This is Issues That Matter. And today on our show, we're going to talk about poverty. We're going to talk about the cause and effect of poverty and a recent study that was done tracking a group of folks in the North Carolina Smoky Mountains. Kind of our agenda. Do you? I don't think so. But it should be. It should be for everybody who's running for political office anywhere. Poverty should be something that's on the agenda. So today is also the 24th of February. And today's the memorial for Kobe Bryant and his daughter, Gina, who were both killed in a helicopter crash in late January. That memorial is taking place at Staples Center in Los Angeles later on today. Our thoughts and prayers are with everyone impacted. And certainly today, I just want to send love and light to everybody as they sit down to memorialize Kobe for his contributions to the culture of Los Angeles, right? And to his impact on basketball and sports. There are so many athletes and so many group of people who say that he inspired them to be better. He inspired a whole generation of athletes, not just from basketball, but athletes who performed in other sports. He inspired a whole generation. Incredible. To have that kind of impact is enviable, isn't it? It's enviable. So, and I hope for you, I know you have an impact somewhere, and I hope that the folks around you give you your flowers while you can breathe them and you can smell them, right? So today we want to talk about, I'm not going to pay any attention to the Democratic debate because I don't know why they're even talking. Didn't they just have one a couple days ago? And it was a wash, right? I'm not interested in that. But and I hope they would talk about what I'm going to talk about right now, which is poverty. And I have been becoming intrigued why it seems that poorer people seem to be more prone to mental health issues. And why our poorer people seem to be more prone to violent crime and to crime in general. And I wanted to see what the correlation of this is. And so I began digging around the internet, as usual, to find some sort of context in which I could have this discussion this morning. So I want to invite you for the next few minutes as you journey with me as I too learn some new stuff about poverty and learn new ideas that perhaps we weren't exposed to before. That's what we attempt to do here on Down to Earth, is to bring you ideas about the issues that maybe we haven't paid attention to, or maybe it could be cultural barriers, it could be social barriers, but we want to explore those as well, right? So thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate your taking time out on this Monday morning. Do so, and wherever you are in the world or wherever you are in the country, I want to say good morning to you. And I just want to give you a heads up. You know, there's this talk about climate change, right? And some people think that climate change doesn't happen. I beg to differ. I live in Michigan, right? And in Michigan, it's February. Typically in February in Michigan, we are like, I have on big heavy sweaters and leggings and so on. In fact, in some cases, I've worn double leggings because it was so cold. I mean, we've had polar vortexes where we had negative temperatures, like the feel like temperature is negative 35, where it's advisable not to even open your front door, where if water drips on your car or on your door lock, it freezes, where you can't open your garage door because it freezes, right? Well, this winter has been one of the mildest that we have seen here in the Midwest. I mean, we barely had snow. We had some snow, nothing to write home about. It wasn't even cold. Saturday, Friday, it was 50 degrees. Saturday, it was even warmer. It was 52 degrees. I almost fell out, y'all. And yesterday, I I couldn't believe it. It was 50 degrees yesterday. It was so warm that I didn't know what to do. I seriously didn't know what to do, right? I didn't wear a coat when I went out. I barely wear a coat most days, right? And I didn't wear a scarf, none of that stuff. But today, guess what? I said since it's so warm, I'm wearing a dress. And I'm not wearing a dress with leggings or pantyhose. I'm making a point how warm it is in Michigan in February, where traditionally this doesn't happen. So anybody who disputes climate change, come over here, right? And see what it feels like, right? Used to be iced over. Now I heard geese are moving around. I mean, they look at the lakes. The lakes are melting, right? The top of the lakes are melting. The top of the ponds are melting, right? There's no ice on the roads. Dudes, that is the weirdest thing ever, right? Okay, I didn't mean for you to be distracted, right? So today I'm wearing, you just need a coat, just put a jacket on and you go on out. It's the weirdest thing ever. So if anybody disputes climate change, I don't know, I beg to differ right now. I beg to differ. So I wanted to introduce some new ideas thought about. I know many of us, as we watch the newscasts every day and we see where violent crime takes place, we often ask ourselves, could they have done better? Or maybe we don't say, could they have done better? You probably look at it and say, why would you do that? That was silly. That was a stupid thing to do. You look at children or people who go into a convenience store. That's my thing, and rob a convenience store. And I'm like, why would you do that? And there are cameras everywhere. You look at young women who commit retail fraud. You know, they walk into a store where there are cameras everywhere and they intend to walk out with merchandise or take merchandise to walk out with. And you ask yourself, are they silly or not? Did they intend to go to jail? Did they want to go to jail? So for some time now, I've been wondering what's the correlation, because I'm asking myself, what is poverty then? Is poverty a state of mind? Is poverty genetics? Is poverty coding in your DNA? What is poverty? Why does this happen? Because certainly, like most of us, I have spent periods in my life when I didn't have all the money that I wanted. I didn't have all the money that I needed. And I didn't go to do things that were what you would consider poor decisions that are going to land you in jail. I've often wondered that even when I look at people, for instance, who are drug dealers and who have made money, right? They've made money from drug dealing. And you're like, then after a while, you don't switch it off. You don't say, okay, I made some money. I got away with it. Let me now take that money and transform it into something else and stop doing it so you don't get caught. You see what I'm saying? So I've often wondered, why do they keep repeating the same cycle? It became something for me to look at when a couple of years ago, some folks I know drew me into this criminal justice reform group, right? And they began looking at people who were in prison generationally. So there's a grandfather in prison, and then there's a son in another prison, and then the grandson is about to go to jail. And that freaked me out. That totally freaked me out. I was like, whoa, 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 what is going on? So like most of us, I kind of wondered, what are the dynamics? What causes poverty? And what's the cure? Because we live in a society here in the United States where we can't say that the government does not work to eradicate poverty. As a matter of fact, with all that you can say about Trump, with all that we don't like about his policies and so on, Trump is now saying his administration has taken the stand that to eradicate poverty, everybody needs to at least have a high school diploma. And the rest of us are like, duh, that should have happened, right? But they feel that at the very least, a high school diploma would negate poverty. But then you and I look at each other like, seriously? Where you can get a job with a high school diploma today? That's going to take you out of poverty. That's going to make you able to pay your bills. Do you see where I'm coming from? But maybe that's what they're thinking from where they're sitting. They're thinking that people are where they are because they didn't graduate high school. That's not necessarily true. people are perhaps where they are because of a whole set of dynamics, which I want to expose to you. This study was published on The Correspondent, and the author of this study spent some time looking into this and has been working with other professors, one from Duke University, who have been studying this for some time. And it took them to economists. Imagine that, economists. And one of the contexts that came out of this, of course, is the law of scarcity. Anybody familiar with that? What's a scarcity mentality? And you will make a poor decision centered around that lack of scarcity. The scarcity mentality is powerful. I think in a lot of cases, that's why people don't have money. It's the scarcity mentality is evident every year when people get tax returns. So they do work every week. They do get a paycheck every 2 weeks. That helps to keep them going. But then you get a one-time flush payment of $4,000 or $3,000, and all of a sudden they think that $3,000 or $4,000 is $3 or $4 million. So they go out and spend it all at once, buying everything, because they tell themselves, I'll never have it again. I'll never have it again. This is all I have. And tell themselves that they are locked into that mindset. It then tells us that there are a couple of things about poverty. Poverty is nature and culture. Poverty is how people think. And poverty can be solved. So there are government programs. There are government programs like ensuring people get a GED. There are government programs that are geared specifically, job placement programs. Those are one of the tools that the Trump administration, I'm not advocating for Trump. I am just looking at the facts. And the facts are one of the things they're doing to eradicate poverty that most people don't see is that when people come out of jail, they can get jobs that will help them ride up out of poverty. Most people, when they come out of jail, because they can't pass a criminal background check, they can't work, which does what? Sends them right back into jail. They commit a crime to go back into jail because they can't rent a house, can't rent an apartment, can't get a loan to go back to school. So now there are specific companies and specific industries who will employ people, knowing the government provides incentives to these employers, knowing that these folks have a criminal background. And so they will earn enough to take them and the next generation out of poverty. So when you look at poverty, then you tend to think that there are some dynamics to it. And I want to read you a brief blurb that my producer wrote. And she said this. She said, what is the cause of mental health problems among poorer people? Have you also noticed that poorer people tend to have mental health issues? Can higher crime rates, lower educational performance, and higher rates of mental illness be cured by simply handing over more money? That's not the answer, is it? No, that's not the answer. Research says the answer is yes, but that's not true. According to data from Duke University, the stress of poverty, listen to this, the stress of poverty, the constant struggle to make ends meet, the constancy of burdening yourself and worrying about how you're going to make ends meet, puts people genetically predisposed to develop an illness or disorder. You place them at an elevated risk. Now you know why. So this is why you go into some environments and you wonder why generations of people in this family or in this area are prone to, well, the area is poor. And the stress, the mental stress. This is why, for instance, you find that I've often said this. I have been a single parent since my divorce in 2002, right? And I used to say that from what I saw of single parents, they died early. They died pretty young. They didn't live beyond 70, 80, or 90. And they died young because I discovered that the stress of raising a child, making ends meet, always constantly having to worry about using of all the available resources to take care of whatever. I used to say that that's what did it. So I am going to take care of myself in spite of. So no matter what else was going on, I was going to eat health and I was going to find programs that helped me. If it's going to take a burden off, then I'm going to do it. So I began to readjust myself and readjust my thinking based on my circumstances. Because before, I didn't have to worry about making ends meet, worrying about how the bills were going to be paid or so on. I didn't have to worry about that. But once I became aware that now that I had become a single parent, that it was necessary for me to think constantly. I said, first of all, I'm not going to go to bed and worry about this stuff. It's going to be solved by the time I wake up in the morning. If it's not tomorrow morning, it's going to be another time. And more pressure came, and more pressure came. And I said, whoa, this is where the rubber meets the road. I'm going to take a break, and I'm going to take a chill pill. And I just go do my yoga. I kid you not. I began to do mental exercises and do positive affirmations and so on, because I was determined that it was not going to take me out. It's not going to kill me. And yet this is what the study is saying, that people who are, and if I had not, for the brief time that that happened to me, if I had not experienced it, I would never have understood it, because I couldn't understand it. I wasn't born poor. I grew up middle class. So I really wasn't exposed to this struggle and poverty thing. Didn't he? You see where I'm coming from? So I was like, wow, what's going on here? So when I look at it and I began to wonder, why do it seems to me that poor people tend to land themselves in jail, tend to have more mental health issues. Now I am understanding why. So in this study, they examined people. As a matter of fact, one of the professors in the study performed a psychiatric test on children, and they studied the Cherokee tribe in North Carolina. The Cherokee tribe set up a casino. Prior to setting up a casino, their income per month per person was $400. They used their own tribal lands and set up a casino. And in setting up a casino in the Smoky Mountains in North Carolina, their income distributed amongst the 8,000 members of that clan, their income went from $400 per month to $6,000 per month. What they studied over time was that the children performed better in school. They gained 1 year of education. And mentally, they did not go in. Guess what? You know what? They didn't commit any crimes. Why? They didn't have to make poor decisions. In other words, poverty causes people to make poor decisions. Poor people don't lack character. They lack money. When they lack money, they make poor decisions. This explains why people go into a convenience store and hold up the convenience store. They're not thinking of the ramifications of their decisions. They're not thinking that you're better off going to find a job that will pay you. You have long term, right? A longer term to achieve what you want to achieve, than to go in there, get a quick fix, get a quick $200 out of that cash register that gives you 20 years to life. Poor people make poor decisions, not because they have poor character, but based on their scarcity. The scarcity of their situation predisposes them to making poor decisions. Now, this is important for sociologists and social scientists to study, because government programs aimed at eradicating poverty often come with some caveats. You must go to high school, right? Must finish high school rather, and job placement. But those are issues that by and large are short term, because it's in the mind. Typically, by the time a person gets to these programs, they've already been damaged. If they grew up in a lifestyle where there was always scarcity, it's going to impact the way they think. Because look at it this way, the scarcity mentality is that it occurs like this. If you don't have it, you focus on it. And you focus on it and you focus on it. And some of us may say, well, tunnel vision is a good thing because you're focused on achieving a goal, but not if that is your constancy of life. If all you ever have to focus on is that you have to worry about eating. Let's say you have to worry about providing food. You have to constantly worry about it. Then what happens is you don't have any mind space to worry about the other things that you need to worry about. This is why it's dangerous for people to live below the federal poverty guidelines. It's dangerous for people to be paid at $9 an hour and $7 an hour, because they're constantly worrying about how they're going to make it. And it's something that employers don't think about, and the people who are entrepreneurs don't think about. They don't care. What we are breeding is a group of people, or a nation of people, who are going to be more prone to healthcare problems. You know what's going to be the solution for that? The Hunger Games. I don't know about you, but as for me and my house, we aim to stay out of any play on the Hunger Games ever becoming a reality, which it seems to me we're headed that way, right? Where they start separating, because if poor people continue to be poor, and the perception from people who are wealthy is that they make poor decisions and they are mentally imbalanced, then we need to separate those people and put them in a pen, put them on a reservation, put them in a special place so they can't come to where we are, because we don't want them to see how we live. We don't want them to see how we live rich and live big and rich. So keep them over there where they're used to it anyway. Haven't you heard that from people? Why are you so worried about the poor, Harriet? Why are you so worried about that? When I started providing services to human trafficking victims, right? I know you're hearing me. When I started providing services, people were like, why are you so worried about that? Someone actually asked me, why are you so worried about a group of, I kid you not, they're used to it anyway. What are you so worried about? They're used to it. Leave them. I kid you not. That's the perception. I went out with a guy once who was going to buy a $300 belt. I think it was a Gucci or something like that. I don't know. And I looked at him like in all seriousness. Now, I don't know. I didn't know I'm not intimate with his financial situation. I'm assuming that he could do it. But I asked him why. I said, why would you spend $300 on a belt? And he said, because I can. As your bills are paid, all the bills for your business are paid, your children's bills are paid, so you can buy a belt for $300. And he said, yeah, I can. And I said, okay. I said, but could it help tomorrow? And he's like, I have a credit card for that. And I said, okay. But to me, I was like, at no stage of the game am I paying $300 for a belt. I'm not paying $150 for a pair of shoes, y'all. I'm not doing it. I ain't going there. Just no. Not when I know that there are people whom that $150 can help. And I looked at him and I said, I guess it's how you look at life anyway. And I couldn't date him anymore because I was like, we don't have anything in common. Because he looks at life like that $300 to him, he could just go buy a belt. He could buy 2 or 3 all at the same time if he wanted. And it didn't bother him. And I said, that's a scarcity mentality. He nearly killed me. He was like, what do you mean? I said, well, you probably have always wanted to be the type of person who can spend $300 on a belt. And now that you can, you think about it, but you don't think that $300 could perhaps stave off poverty for the next 2 generations. I was done by that time. He was like, I was just like, you know what? I was like, oh, we don't have anything in common. It ended right there. It was like, oh no, that's not how I want to think about stuff. You see where I'm coming from? Money changes you, and having money changes the way you look at it. There's a guy I follow on Instagram. You may know him, Floyd Mayweather, right? He grew up very poor. He was a fighter. He was a boxer, right? And now he's made money. And he likes to, for him, it is important to him that you know how much money he has. Now, I don't know. Like I said, I'm not intimate with his financial. So I don't know what his investment portfolio looks like. I do know that he has a lot of cars. And my thing is, that's a lot of money tied up in cars that you can only drive one at a time. To me, it's not important to spend $500,000 on a car or $200,000 on a car. I mean, if it gets you around, yeah. But to me, a car is a car is a car. It gets you from point A to point B. No, I like a car with comfort and luxury because when you're driving, you think of safety. Don't get me wrong. But I'm not going to spend $200,000 on a car, y'all. I'd rather take that $200,000 and go invest in some stocks that's going to give me a longer term benefit. Do you see what I'm saying? But here's Mr. Mayweather. he buys cars, he buys shoes. And I'm like, at some point, somebody needs to tell this guy to stop. Go invest that money. Go put that money in an investment vehicle. Because it always looks new. You know, they tell you that you're worth 500 million or 200 million. But how much money do you have in the bank? How much money is coming in? How much money is coming in and how much do you have to spend to make it? The numbers don't lie. Isn't that the truth? I was reading an article recently and they asked people, most people, when financial planners ask people, well, what's your monthly budget? Most people don't know what their monthly budget is. I have some callers here. Let me take caller number 1. You've been holding a while. Hi, this is Harriet Kamek with Down to Earth.
You know, your audio is fluttering pretty bad today.
It could
Maybe they don't.
Yeah, I don't know. Thanks for
But
pointing it out.
you know, on your topic, and let's look at the African Americans, blacks.
Mhm.
One of the things that drags them and holds them in poverty is, of course, economics, but the education.
Uh-huh.
And when you look at the data, you see where blacks are overrepresented in low-paying majors. Now, you can't blame college students because where they come from in the elementary years, that's where the problem lies.
Mm-hmm.
The programs, the curriculums.
Mm-hmm.
You know, curriculum can be whatever a local school district wants it to be, i.e., the people. But
Right.
they are not being prepared,
Uh-huh.
and they've been steered away from the hard subjects.
Right.
And another thing,
Uh-huh.
I think too much emphasis is put on sports, i.e., basketball and football,
Mm-hmm.
because to practice and be good at that, and many of them fall way short and never make it, they have to sacrifice their academics.
Uh-huh.
And that, in fact, is what hurts them. So that's one reason. It may not be the only, but it is one
It's a
main reason.
contributing factor.
It's the
Okay.
lack. Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That's an interesting perspective there. Interesting. Very interesting. I'm constantly amazed at how we think. Caller number 2. Thanks for joining us. Hello? Caller number 7244. You still there? All right. Hello. Hi. Good morning. This is Harriet with Down to Earth.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It's a great topic. And I think from what Bianchi just said, speaking about education,
Mm-hmm.
and I have a brother who is in education,
Mm-hmm.
and he speaks a lot about certain disparities, even some of the things he has to see and go through and also endure as a black teacher here in America.
Yeah.
We talk about how the system is, and just to add on what you guys are just talking about, when you throw in the school to prison pipeline,
Yeah.
you understand this is a thing that's 100% real.
Mm-hmm.
The school to prison pipeline, so meaning sometimes some of these school systems and teachers may have more incentive on marking our children wrong,
Right.
saying that they are wrong and they are criminal,
Mm.
and sending them over to the prison system more.
Wow.
This person is acting out rather than, and I think these are the dynamics that did change when we
Yeah.
had integration. 'Cause I
Ah.
can remember back in the day hearing the stories from segregation, it was more of a personal experience between the teacher and also the child. One where if the child wasn't doing what he or she may need to be doing, the
Mm.
teacher would, probably know the parent, and they would be able to get a resolve for these issues. But when we look at poverty, we look at, again, going back to what Bianca said, the education. And currently, right now, our education to and for our children isn't a one that is fitting for them to feel good about themselves. Even
Right.
when we look at a historical content and what they're learning in schools, they are now taught that, hey, Black history is something that you can only do for one month out of the year. You understand? I'm
Wow.
pretty sure that's what, and a lot of people aren't even. So it's minimalizing, the education, the substantial education, for the child or for the children to now feel good about themselves. So rather than feeling that they are worthless, going back again to poverty, rather than feeling like they're worthless, they're feeling like they have worth. I feel like that the riches, the wealth is coming from internally. You understand? The books that our mothers are reading to us, helping us to feel good and identify with ourselves. Even when you look at the culture, the hip hop culture, which has become a popular culture, is the one that promotes worthlessness. It's the one that promotes worthlessness and is teaching our children, hey, it's a profit in being worthless. It's a profit in being a thot.
Right.
It's a profit in being a slut. It's a profit in being a thug or all this other stuff. Hey, look at Future. And going back again to what Bianca said, I think this system is actually selling to our children, hey, you can make it and you can do a whole lot better for yourself running this football. Running, shooting this basketball rather than saying, hey, you can do good for yourself, because we don't really see those images of black successful doctors.
So what you're saying, so basically what you're saying is that education is a way out of poverty, and education will improve their mindset as they look at their lives. That's what you're saying.
100%.
100%.
100%.
Right.
Wow. And I'm not trying to go off or take a shot at anybody, but a lot of our religions, our mainstream religions, rather than us looking at the deity or the savior being able to identify with us, we have to look at him, like I grew up in the church. And when I went to church, I would have to look at the back in the back at a white Jesus, rather than looking at somebody that looked like myself. Again, adding back to that worth to myself and feeling confident. Now I'm looking at and holding up the person that, really doesn't favor me. So, I think it's a psychological thing, and it does start with education.
All right. Well, thank you so much for calling in. I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I kid you not. It never fails to amaze me how different topics land on some of us. And do you see how important it is sometimes to have conversation, because you bring other perspectives in, and everybody has something to say. And I would hope that politicians who are running this year, next year, and those who are in this election cycle, I do hope they pay some attention to what the people are saying, because what we're continuing to say is that education makes a difference in people's lives. And if education makes a difference in people's lives, then we need to be able to help people. In fact, in the study that I read, it says that governments use education, financial guidelines, and job programs to alleviate or eradicate poverty. What the social scientists are saying is that those don't work. They work for some, but they don't work for others, right? And what they're saying is that they don't work because it's genetically predisposition, just like the caller is saying. That's basically what he's saying. If we educate people, then we perhaps have a chance to change their mindset. If we refocus how they look at stuff, if we refocus how they view stuff, we might just have a chance to change their mindset. Isn't that interesting? That is mind-blowing to me, because I do think that education works. But I also think that by the time, this is what I think, and this is what the study says, if you look at a small child who grew up in poverty, from the time it's born until it becomes aware of himself, usually by about 6 to 8 years old, if that child grew up in abject poverty, their mindset and their opinions have already been formed. So they're going to go to school and their mindsets are preformed. If poverty is endemic in the environment around them, like in some inner cities across the country, there's no infrastructure, right? We all know how it works. So there's no budget, no money in the budget to educate kids, because education is a way out. If people are educated, they can do what? Say it. Get better jobs. If they can get better jobs, they have a better feeling about themselves, because they feel like they can take care of children. They can take care of themselves. They can save money for a rainy day. Do you know how much that impacts people? Let me ask you this. For those of us, you have money put away. You have money in a 401k. You have money saved. You have 6 months of mortgage money, 6 months of car payment money, 6 months of bills money. Some of you have 15 years of bill money put away. Do you realize that you are not subject to the same level of stress? In the study that I read, it says poverty is the equivalent of losing 14 IQ points, which is almost like saying you lost a whole night's sleep. Poverty is the equivalent of losing 14 IQ points. That tells us why poor people make poor decisions. You've all been in grocery stores. The last time I was in a store, maybe that's why I don't go to big box stores much anymore, and I saw a young mother being let out because she had stolen some diapers. And I was like, if she had just asked one of us, we would have bought the diapers. She didn't have to go spend time in jail for a pack of baby diapers. But then I had to ask myself, but I'm buying the baby diapers for today. What about next time when they need baby diapers? She didn't think that far. You see what I'm saying? You see the difference? All she was focused on was the scarcity of the moment. This is why some people don't send their kids to school, because today, right now, they don't have a babysitter. They would have to stop from going to work for the child to go to school if the child is sick, right? They're also looking at how much is it going to cost. And they're like, I don't have the money. No, they don't look at the long term, that keeping the child out of school is making the child not like school. They're not going to learn anything. Eventually, the child develops a habit and a lifestyle of not wanting to go to school, period. Do you see what I'm saying? So eventually that child develops issues. So even if the parent's circumstances change, the child still has those problems that will later on manifest. Like I was telling you, in this study, the Duke University professor who did this performed a psychiatric test on children who from the Cherokee tribe. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Forgive me for any mispronunciation. It was not intentional, and it's not meant as a sign of disrespect for the preservation of your heritage. In this study, she tested young children. Remember, the parents were earning $400 per month. After the establishment of the casino, their incomes went up to $6,000 per month. What happened with those children? They found that the children stayed in school longer and they didn't commit crimes. Remarkable, isn't it? When they questioned the parents were still working hard. They were still working just as many hours. They were just making more money. So the parents say they're able to make more money. They're able to save more, so they felt better about their future, felt better about their ability to provide. They didn't have to worry about bills. They could take care of it. This is why I'm telling all of us. It's a scarcity mentality when you go to buy a house you can't afford. You have to really be conscious of yourself. It's a scarcity mentality, a poverty mentality. The economists refer to it as a scarcity mentality because that's all economists study, right? They don't study plenty. They don't study having more. They study scarcity. But look at it this way. If you're going to buy a house, that if your spouse loses her job, it's going to be a challenge to pay the mortgage and pay the bills, because the more money you spend on a house, the lifestyle changes. Some people don't think like that. You don't realize that till you're in the house and you realize that that's what the neighbors do. And if you don't do it, they're going to look at you funny and you will feel funny, and your kids will feel funny and act funny. So when you're going to buy a house and you say it's going to improve our equity, we're going to have more equity in the house and so on, think about the lifestyle. I like to say it like this. If you're going to live in a house that costs over $250,000, your budget needs to be $6,000 a month. So that if it costs, because it's going to cost you $4,000 a month to live. Nowadays, with food costs going up, it's almost, so make sure you have a budget of $6,000. So you have to say, well, I'm barely scraping by at $5,900 or $5,500. What happens if you're putting stress on yourself? people get their tax returns and they go pay down on a brand new car, on the car of their dreams. You drive off the lot and you pay $2,500 down, and you're like, it was easy to get into, but the payments come in at $599 a month. The insurance comes in. The other attendant things come in, right? Add that up. That is putting stress on you. What if something happens? You always have to plan for a what if. You have to put some money away, and more than enough. So my thing is, don't buy a house that you can't afford. So many people do that. Most people don't spend. Most people are smart. Some people, what they do when they get their tax returns, that's when they take that tax return money to go on vacation. They plan a Disney vacation with a family. They go in the summer and they pay for it with the tax return money. Some people use it to do a home improvement project at home. And yet for others, they go buy a house. They go buy a car that they can't afford. They go spend the money. Put that money away and buy some stocks out of it. Put away something so the longer it stays there, it's going to accrue and accrue and accrue and accrue and accrue until by the time you're ready to use it at 55 or 60, you have something. I also believe that you should go and get educated. If it does nothing, it makes you feel better about yourself. Have something about yourself. Have a project to do. And I know that when people are poor, you can't focus on anything else but the scarcity of the moment. And even when some people make more money, they still, because of what they had endured or lived through, they still can't get past it. This is why you see when young athletes make a lot of money, they spend the money so fast, it disappears. It's a scarcity mentality. Look at it this way. If you go to your refrigerator and it's empty, you're going to feel hungry. But if your refrigerator is full, you feel full too. You're like, yeah, I don't have to eat. But if your refrigerator is empty, gosh, you're going to eat everything out. Right? The scarcity mentality. And we look at these things and I see where most of us are like, you know what? Poor people are causing way too many problems in the society. They're always mentally ill. But think about that. Because of scarcity, make more programs. And when you talk about stuff like this, you know what people come up with? They say you're being a socialist. No, you're being human. You're saying make more opportunities available so people feel better about themselves. You'd be surprised. Most people don't need a lot to live. They just need to live and let live. Pay them a reasonable wage. I'm talking to Amazon, Jeff Bezos and company, who refuses to pay his people well and gives them the wickedest conditions to work under. Pay them well. Right? I read a recent report on CNBC that just this morning before coming on air that says that they can't find enough workers. They can't find skilled laborers because people are like, you have to give me the pay and you have to give me the benefits, and I want a work environment that is sustainable to me. I don't want somewhere where it's constantly performance-based that drives people crazy and makes them ill. Then they go home, their backs are broken, they're stressed out, and now they have more issues. And on top of that, they have to worry about losing their house. Pay people so they can live. It's not going to hurt you. It's not really going to take out your bottom line. Pay people so they can live. It's better for all of us. It's going to reduce crime in the long run. Yes, it will. It will reduce crime in the long run. And if one thing we are all worried about is crime, that's why we're moving further and further away. I'm putting up more gated communities. There are more gated communities in America today than there were in the 90s and the early 2000s. That's because we're worried about crime. Our vehicles, our motor vehicles are impenetrable. I'm surprised they're not made out of bulletproof glass by now. I kid you not. That's what Tesla is, right? It's virtually indestructible, right? People are looking at it like, yeah, if I pull up at the stop sign and the panhandler won't come smashing on my windscreen because he wants my iPhone 11 Pro Max. Or he thinks he can get my earbuds out of my ear. Perception. Right? People, you remember when people used to kill people to get Jordans? It was the lifestyle they wanted. They could also go take it and go make a quick buck. Poor people make poor decisions, not because they have poor character, but because they don't think it through. Because of scarcity. They think only in the context, right now, this moment, right now. This is what they think about. They don't think about the long-term consequences. And that comes from a state of mental unwellness. So basically, then, poor people are poorer and continue to be poor because of mental health issues. Well, if they have a predisposition, guess what's going to happen? It's going to exacerbate that, right? It's going to exacerbate that. Let me see if I've covered the main points that I wanted to cover this morning. And I want to make sure that we walk away with this. There was a study on insanity. I don't know if we all remember this, or we all are familiar with this. Insanity in Massachusetts in 1855. And it tried to examine the correlation between poverty and mental illness. So they've been studying this for some time, y'all. You and I are looking at each other like, sure, right? The same study by Duke University also found that poverty made people more prone to behavioral problems. That is a truism. That is a truism. So governments are going to continue to look at ways, and it's not just here in the US, it's in other countries, because the study also looked at people in other countries, in India, for instance. But poverty does contribute to people making poor decisions because you're looking at the context. You're looking at now. It's scarcity. So for years, we were looking at the psychological impacts. But what we didn't look at was why. The real why is because of scarcity. If we can address the issue by providing people with jobs that they have access to, so they can buy a car, buy a house, and so on, and keep the job, for the love of God, stop firing people when it comes close to 90 days. That thing sets a toll on people. It's traumatic. Stop it. Employers, you don't want to pay people health benefits. So as it comes 90 days, you fire people. You're wicked. You're contributing to the mental health turmoil that is taking place in the society. I've heard too many stories of this now for it to just be random events. It's happening all across the country. Recently, I spoke to a psychiatrist who was counseling someone because they went to work, they were qualified for the job, and they promised them the sun, the moon, and the stars. And then within 3 months, just before the 90-day mark, they fired them and sent that young person into a turmoil. Became suicidal because they thought they had done something wrong. They have student loans to repay. They thought they were on a path to create a living wage or a living cycle for themselves. Instead, they had to move back home because of this. Employers, you're hearing me. Stop it. It's wicked and it's cruel, right? And we never were like this. America was never built on that. That's not what made America great. America used to provide for its people. People had jobs that they could go to that helped them to cope with their lives. They felt good because they could go on vacation. They felt good because mom didn't have to go to work to help make it. People could stay home with their children. People could stay home and be there for their children. You don't have to leave your children to people and rush home to make sure you get them from the bus stop, and then the next day you go back to work and they tell you you're not welcome anymore because you have children. Come on, we need to stop that. We want to be a great nation again. Invest in our people. Our people are our natural resources. We need to talk to our young people about going to study for an engineering degree that takes 5 years. Go study to be a medical doctor or a scientist or a research scientist or a pharmacologist. Don't just tell people to go study for the humanities because it's easy and you come out. Long term. Let's look at these things long term, right? Thank you so much, everybody. It's been my pleasure. And it's been an honor to serve you this morning. It truly is an honor. I don't take it lightly that you join me on my broadcast today. Thank you so much. If this message has been a blessing to you, could you please share it with others? Thank you to my callers who are my faithful listeners. Thank you so much for calling in and for your contribution. I take what you say. It has more impact on me than you could ever know. And I thank you so much to all of you out there who are working today to help eradicate poverty in your bloodline. I give you a shout out. For all of you who are going to pick this phone up today and call one of your family members and tell them, "Hero, how can I help you?" I give you a shout out. And to those of you who are social scientists, you're social workers, you're constantly counseling and giving people and giving of yourselves, I just want to say thank you to teachers who are seeing students coming into classrooms without what they need for an education. Teachers who are buying children coats, not saying anything to anybody. They just buy them a coat. They know they're hungry. Teachers who stop at McDonald's and buy food to bring to the classroom because the children come into school hungry. That's a glaring problem in our society. We're not paying people because we have become mean. We want it all for ourselves. So we're creating the wide wealth gap and the economic disparities. It's not, how the thing is, education does help, but they got to get to education. I'm going to close on this. A few months ago, back in the fall, my youngest daughter was getting ready to go to college. You know, the college application process. So you know how that works in the fall. You start looking at colleges and so on. And she needed to submit a transcript to one of the colleges she was interested in. And when she went to her counselor, her school counselor class office, she said there were a number of students in there who had no idea how to navigate the process. Sometimes lack of information and not having the right information is a barrier to people achieving education. Because my daughter knew how to submit the application, she went in to make sure her transcript was submitted. So one of the colleges she wanted, she ended up helping 5 other students who did not know. She said, "Mom, I just sat there and I was so humbled." She said, "The knowledge that I had, I didn't realize it could help someone else." And she sat there and helped them. And that made me think, sometimes there is the college application. The children, but they just didn't have the tools. So they couldn't access. And going to college would have made such a difference. See what I'm saying? Yeah. That made me think twice, right? I want to thank you so much. Go to my website, harrietkamak.com. Continue to listen to my podcast on Spotify, Google, Apple, iHeartRadio. Everywhere there's a podcast platform, we probably are on it. Thank you so much, everybody. It's Monday. Be blessed, everybody. See you tomorrow. Bye for now. It's Monday. And it's Monday. Thanks, everybody. This is Harriet Kamak with Down to Earth. Thanks so much. Be blessed.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.